A new trailer just dropped in Pokemon TCG Pocket, which revealed a lot of new cards, and we're gonna take a look at those cards right now. So we have two new supporters, which one of them is Leaf, as you can see on your screen, and it says during your turn the retreat cost of your active Pokemon is 2 less. She is a supporter card, and I think it's needless to say that that is just a better X speed. And since X-Speed is a staple in most of the decks that are played right now, Leaf will be another staple for most decks. Although keep in mind, not for every single deck. For example, my Pikachu EX deck, right? Every single Pokemon that I play has only one retreat cost, and playing Leaf would be completely useless. It would be overkill. Then X-Speed does the job excellently for my Pikachu EX deck. But make no mistake, Leaf will be a staple for most decks in the meta right on release. The second supporter that we got with this new trailer is Blue. And what Blue does is, during your opponent's next turn, all of your Pokemon take minus 10 damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. Now, while Leaf is pretty useless for the Pikachu EX deck, as everything has just one retreat cost anyways, Blue is perfectly made for just that deck. Because there are a lot of cards in this meta game that counter Pikachu EX by one-shotting it, such as a new card that we will talk about soon in this video. But also like stuff like Arcanine EX, for example, is the biggest counter to Pikachu EX. And with Blue in my deck, I would be able to prevent my opponent from one-shotting my Pikachu EX, which is absolutely amazing, and it will be game deciding in a lot of matches, so keep an eye out for Blue. So now let's move on to the Pokemon and take a look at Marshadow first. Now, Marshadow is a fighting type Pokemon with 80 HP, and it does 40 damage for 2 energy. But if any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from an attack during your opponent's last turn, this attack does 60 more damage. It has 1 retreat cost, and obviously as a fighting type you have weakness to the psychic type. Now, how good will Marshadow actually be, and is this a good card or not? First of all, we have to notice that Marshadow is a basic Pokemon, which if you look at the available cards for the fighting type actually lacks a little bit of good basic Pokemon. Although we have Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee, which are not too bad. So this is what we have to compare Marshadow to. Is Marshadow better than Hitmonchan and or Hitmonlee? And my first impression and opinion on this matter is no, because 40 damage for 2 energy is just simply not enough, and its effect of doing 100 damage, sure, 100 damage is good, but it is also not enough. Yeah, it's just another counter to the Pikachu EX. It's the same story again. Every single card in this game counters Pikachu EX, and this is what this card is made for, to counter the Pikachu EX. Now, the problem with this card though is that it is simply outclassed by Hitmonlee, as Hitmonlee has the same amount of HP, Hitmonlee only needs 1 energy, and it does 30 damage, which is way better than dealing 40 damage for 2 energy. And what Hitmonlee does is, it provides something to the fighting type deck that is very unique, and that the fighting type does not have access to without Hitmonlee, which is simply hitting your enemy's bench Pokemon. And additionally, the fighting type does not need a Pokemon to counter Pikachu EX, because it already has for example, a Primeape, right? And the Marowak EX and the Machamp, and point here is the fighting type does simply not need another counter to Pikachu. And it doesn't even counter Pikachu straight up, it needs an effect. You have to give up one prize or even two to make this happen. So yeah, sorry Marshadow, but you are pretty garbage. Okay, now let's move on to the two new EX Pokemon got revealed. And first, let's take a look at Mew EX. It's a basic Pokemon, Psychic type. It has 130 HP and it does 20 damage for 1 energy. Now, that's obviously pretty garbage, right? But what makes Mew very interesting is its second attack for 3 colorless energy, which says choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attack and use it at this attack, as this attack. What is very interesting about this is that you can slot Mew into every single deck you want, because it just needs 3 colorless energy. You don't need to play the Psychic energy to play Mew. Additionally, and what Mew will mostly be used as is as a quote-unquote counter to Mewtwo EX and Charizard EX, as this is just a basic Pokemon that can be slotted into every single deck and one-shot those two, which pretty much nothing else in this game does. That is what makes Mew EX very interesting. It is very specific and kinda niche though, to be honest, because if we look at the metagame, not a lot of attacks require you to attach 3 energy, right? We usually attack for 1 or 2 energy attachment, and then having 3 to just copy what your opponent does it's questionable. But Mew, make no mistake, Mew is pretty interesting as it counters Mewtwo EX and Charizard EX, but then also kind of. Will Mew be meta? Will this see a lot of play? I don't know. But all I can say for now is it's a pretty interesting addition to the roster. Our second EX Pokemon that got revealed during this trailer is Aerodactyl EX. Now, that is a stage 1, it has 140 HP and it's a fighting type. And it is a very interesting ability. It says your opponent can't play any Pokemon from their hand to evolve their active Pokemon. That's it. Otherwise, it does 80 damage for 2 energy. Now, honestly, I think that is pretty useless garbage. And let me tell you why. First of all, it's fighting type. And again, fighting type does not need more stage 1 Pokemon, because it has Primeape and Sandslash and even Marowak EX, which are all way better than Aerodactyl EX. The only thing that makes this Aerodactyl EX interesting is its ability, but hear me out. Your opponent can't evolve their active Pokemon, right? That doesn't sound too bad on the surface, but if you think about it, no one plays a Pokemon that he wants to evolve in the active spot. Everyone puts their Pokemon that they want to evolve onto their bench anyways. You don't put like a Ralts or something into the active to evolve it. So Pokemon will always be evolved on the bench. And Aerodactyl prevents the active Pokemon from being evolved, which will be completely useless in like 90% of the cases. It's again, just like Mew, very, very niche, but even more useless. And if you look at its attack, 2 energy for 80, that's not what we do. We do 90 for 2 energy, especially on a stage 1. So I'm sorry, Aerodactyl, but you are already outclassed by many others, like even a Primeape, but especially the Marowak EX, so you won't see a spot in the meta, I can already guarantee it. Moving on to the non-EX Pokemon that got revealed. So, excuse me, but this is the best screenshot I could get of our new Pikachu. We don't know how much energy this attack will require, but I'm pretty sure what it says is it deals additional damage based on the amount of energy that is attached to this Pikachu. Now the Pikachus that we already have in the game are mediocre at best, so this one will probably be the best Pikachu that we have available in the game. So yeah, I just want to mention it real quick, but let's move on. And next up we have Tauros. Now that one is quite interesting. It is a basic Pokemon, of course. It has 100 HP and it needs 3 colorless energy to do 40 damage. But if your opponent's active Pokemon is in Pokemon EX, this attack does 80 more damage, which means it does 120 damage. And surprise, surprise, we have just another card added to this game that completely counters the Pikachu EX. Now, to be fair though, it needs 3 energy, which is heavy investment. It has 2 retreat costs, which, yeah, with the addition of Leaf that we talked earlier, that's not too much of a big deal anymore, but it's also not optimal. And Pikachu EX can one-shot this Tauros with the help of a Giovanni. So, will this card be viable? No, absolutely not, right? It's better than the Tauros that we already have in the game, so that's a slight improvement, but yeah, there's no way this will ever see play in any deck whatsoever, because there are countless other Pikachu counters that do the job way better. And moving on to Magma, which is a basic Pokemon. It's fire type and it has 80 HP, and for 2 energy you do 80 damage, but you have to discard 2 fire energy from this Pokemon after your attack, and he has 2 retreat costs. Now, in comparison to our old Magma, the one that we already have, it also has 80 HP and it does a flat 50 for 2 energy, and that's it. So it's up to you to decide what is better. Deal 80 damage but discard 2, or just have a flat 50. And spoiler alert, it is much better to just do flat 50 for 2 energy instead of 80 and having to discard 2 fire energy. Since this is a fire type and it would be played in fire decks if it would be any good, the last thing that you ever want to do is invest fire energy that you have to discard. All the energy that you generate through Moltres EX goes onto your Charizard, and it's all about getting that Charizard up. So now hear me out though. We have Ninetales, Rapidash, right? That's a very competitive, high tier meta deck, and it's all about speed. And what this Magma does is it provides exactly that, speed. It is a very good. Now in this deck, Rapidash Ninetales, some people play Farfetch'd, and this Farfetch'd might be replaced with this new Magma, because the scenario will occur in which you will not be able to draw into your Ninetales, right? And when this scenario occurs, this Magma is actually not too bad, although it is a little bit on a slow side. But it also does 80 damage. That's not too bad. The problem is it discards 2 instead of just 1 fire energy, and that might make it worse than Farfetch'd. It is just too inconsistent. You attack once for 80 and then you are sitting duck with 80 HP. I don't think this will be viable. I think it's slightly too bad to get the job done, but we will have to find out. It competes with Farfetch'd and it might replace the Farfetch'd. Do I think it will? No. Discarding 2 fire energy is just too much, but we will have to wait and see. It is a little bit interesting at least. We have a new Execute. So the one on the left hand side is the new one, and the one on the right side is the old one. So let's compare these two to each other. They both have 50 HP, they are both basic Pokemon obviously, and for just 1 energy, what the new one does is it generates a grass energy from your energy zone to this Pokemon to execute. While the old one for 1 grass energy does flat out 20 damage. They both have 1 retreat cost, they both have weakness to fire. So what is better? I think the answer here is very, very, very obvious. And there are 2 reasons for this. The new execute here on the left hand side does no damage. And why is it so goddamn useless to generate a grass energy to this very Pokemon and not to the bench? That is because it evolves into Executor or Executor EX, and both of these cards only need 1 energy attachment to get their job done. So excuse me, so generating an additional grass energy to this very Executor is completely irrelevant. You could argue now that attaching an additional grass energy has value because you would have the option to pay the 3 retreat cost that those executors have. But remember, we talked about a new supporter card earlier, which is called Leaf, and what Leaf does is she reduces the retreat cost of a Pokemon by 2, which with Leaf in the game makes this Executor even less viable than it already was to begin with. So the old Execute here is much, much better because it just does 20 for 1 energy. That's nothing amazing, right? But it's still way, way better, as this new Execute, is completely useless. And next up, we have 3 basic Pokemon revealed to us, which there's not a lot to talk about, but there's one thing. So let's go over them one by one. Let's talk about Snivy first. It's a grass, 70 HP, and it does 40 for 2 energy with 1 retreat cost. There's nothing special about it, other than we know that this set will also bring its evolutions with Servine and Superior to the game, and that is what makes this card very, very interesting. But we don't have any information about its evolutions quite yet. So that's all that I can show you for now. Let's move on to the next cards that also fall into the same category as Snivy, which one of those is Larvestar. It's a fire Pokemon, it's a basic with 80 HP that does 30 for 2 energy with 2 retreat cost. Now that stands out as garbage, it's too much retreat cost, that's too less damage. At least it has 80 HP though, I will give it that. That's not bad for a basic Pokemon that can evolve. But all that makes this card as interesting is that we know we're gonna get Volcarona. And a lot of people are gonna be really hype about Volcarona. Unfortunately, I can't tell you anything about it as we don't have any further information, but get hyped. So there's one more card, which is Morlul. That's a grass Pokemon. It's a basic with 60 HP and it does 20 for 1 grass energy and it has 1 retreat cost. Again, all that is hype about this card and all there is to say about it is that we know we will get its evolution. And I mean, that's pretty hype, right? It's a pretty cool Pokemon. So let's move on to something a little bit more interesting, which is Delmise. That is a basic grass Pokemon with 100 HP and it does 20 damage for 1 energy. But if this Pokemon has at least 3 extra grass energy attached, this attack does 70 more damage, which would add up to 90. Now, so it has 2 retreat cost as well. That on the surface, just as it is, sounds like terrible garbage, right? But what makes this card interesting is that if you look at the grass type Pokemon that we have available to us, there's no basic Pokemon like this. We don't have, so to speak, wall, right? Something that we can put into the active and that will survive like a hit or two, maybe even 3, right? So that is exactly what the grass type needed. Although the problem with this is, as I mentioned, it is not good by any means whatsoever, right? So will this card be viable? That is really hard to tell. Yes, the grass type needed a basic Pokemon that is at least somewhat solid and take a hit or 2, but I mean 20 damage for 1 energy, that is, what are you going to ever do with this, right? It's just there as a wall with 100 HP that will try to buy you a turn or 2. And yeah, it's never gonna happen. You're never gonna attach 3 more energy to this Pokemon to deal 17 more damage. That will never happen, ever. So it is really just 20 damage for 1 energy, and that is completely fucking garbage. Sorry, I have to say it like that. What this card competes with is Kangaskhan. Now Kangaskhan has 3 retreat cost, and it is very coin flippy. You flip 2 coins, and for each heads you do 30 damage for 1 energy, right? That is high potential. It's high risk, high reward. Well, but Dhelmise only does 20, you know? And this 1 retreat cost more that Kangaskhan has is not too much of a big deal anymore because of Leaf, you know? Remember the supporter card. So I think if there's nothing else for the grass type released that would in any way, shape or form make Dhelmise better than it is right now, I think this is just straight up outclassed, especially by Kangaskhan. So I don't see it being viable, but it's an interesting addition nonetheless. And the last 2 Pokemon we're gonna talk about are Vaporeon and Dedenne. Let's cover them together, cause why not? So let's first take a look at Dedenne. It's a lightning Pokemon, basic, with 60 HP, and it does 10 damage for 1 energy. And you flip a coin. If you flip a coin, and if heads, your opponent's Pokemon, active Pokemon, is now paralyzed. So what this Dedenne competes with is Pincurchin. Pincurchin has 70 HP as a basic, and it does 30 for 2 energy. And you also flip a coin and leave the opponent's Pokemon paralyzed if heads. So I think Dedenne will be way better, and the reason is very simple. It just needs 1 energy less to do its job, right? Pincurchin is not used to deal a lot of damage. It is used to buy you a turn or 2 by paralyzing the opponent. And Dedenne does exactly the same stuff, but for 1 energy less, which is much more consistent. Often I played a Pikachu EX deck with a Pincurchin in it, and it's a huge bummer a lot of times to have to attach 2 energy. Now I can do this, get the same job done by just attaching 1 energy, which helps me a lot. It makes my decks by 1 turn faster because I have to attach 1 energy less, which is absolutely amazing. So Dedenne is guaranteed 100% the meta, and it outclasses Pincurchin, and people will play Dedenne instead of it. Now let's move on to Vaporeon though. That's a stage 1. That's obviously a water type. I know it's mind-blowing. We don't see its HP, we don't know how much HP it has, and we also don't see how much damage it does for 3 energy. And we don't see its retreat cost either. All of this sounds like a bummer, but that is kind of irrelevant. All of these things are kind of irrelevant. Why is that? Because Vaporeon will only be played for its ability, which it will provide to your team, let's say, to your deck, by sitting on the bench anyways. So, although, yeah, don't get me wrong, it's not completely irrelevant how much retreat cost or HP it has, because Sabrina is a thing. But yeah, the ability is what this Pokemon will be played for, and it can provide this ability from the bench. So what it does is, as often as you like during your turn, you can move a water energy from one of your benched Pokemon to your active. That is incredibly good. Because now, okay, hear me out. Look, Articuno EX, right? It needs 3 energy to attack, and it has 2 retreat cost. Now we have this new supporter card, Leaf, which says reduce the retreat cost of one of your Pokemon by 2. That means you can now retreat Articuno for free, put something else in the active, and have it immediately be ready like that by using Vaporeon's ability. For example, that makes Lapras EX much more viable. This makes Blastoise much more viable. This makes playing 2 Articuno EX and retreating one for the other much more consistent. So Vaporeon is a huge win for water decks. It makes them way more consistent. Maybe Blastoise will even be good enough because of this Vaporeon. We will have to wait and see. But don't sleep on Vaporeon. That is a very, very good card, and it will guaranteed see play. And there we have it. That were all the cards that got revealed to us during this new trailer, which I think is absolutely fucking fantastic. I hope if you are even half as excited as I am, you are having a good day and a blast. I hope that video was informative and fun. But until next time, take care of yourselves, have a great day, and bye bye.